Hi, this is Joy at Pine Quilt Shop. Today we're going to talk about tools that you can use to square up half square triangles. So we're going to start with three tools that we're looking at. I have all three of them in front of me. One is the tucker trimmer, the other one is the block lock, and the one that I have in the middle is a unique tool. That is the half square 4-in-1 triangle ruler from Brenda Henning, and it is a Creative Grids ruler. And this ruler is the one ruler of the three that actually can cut half square triangles and also square them up. So it's a little bit unique. So we're going to start with that one. So this ruler, if you use this end of it, you can cut half square triangles from a strip of fabric. So that's one thing that makes it a little unique. It also has a slot here and here, so you can use it to mark lines 1/4 inch off of the diagonal center if you are making multiple half square triangles from squares, which is the other thing that's a little bit unique. It is set up so that you can square up half square triangles either before or after they are pressed. So here's a half square triangle that has not been pressed yet, and I'm going to use the seam line and line the 2-inch line up with the seam line, and now I will be making a 2-inch finished half square triangle if I trim here and I trim here. And I have this at an angle so you guys can see, so I'm not going to cut because it would be a little tricky for me to cut from this side. But that will give you a 2-inch finished half square triangle, and you would be trimming it before you press. Now, I personally like to press first because I feel like I'm more accurate that way. And one quick reminder, when you're pressing half square triangles, you always want to set your seam. Normally you're going to press towards the dark. And when you're pressing, you want to follow the straight of grain, which is here and here. You don't want to press into that center because that is all bias. So when you press, press this way and press this way. So press this way and press this way. So you're following the straight of grain. You have straight of grain here, 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 and here, but you don't have it in the middle. So don't press into that center. Go this direction when you're pressing. I like to press them first. If they are pressed first, then you will use a slightly different spot on this ruler. I have a little bit bigger block here. This one I could actually make a 2.5 inch half square triangle with. So I will line up the 2.5 inch seam line, and I will go ahead and trim here and here. And I am going to rotate this one and trim this one for you because I want you to see what it looks like when you do the other side. So the first side, I'm simply lining up my seam line, getting that lined up with that dotted dashed line, and I'm going to go ahead and trim on that side, and I'm going to go ahead and trim on this side. Now when I rotate the block, I'm going to flip this back so you guys can see. When I rotate the block, I will be lining up in two places. I will be lining my seam line up again, and I'm going to be lining up the 2.5 inch corner marking here as well. So I'll line up there, there's my 2.5 inches, and there's my 2.5 inch seam line, and then I would go ahead and trim the other side. So that is how that tool works, and it can trim up with either the half square triangle pressed or unpressed. The tucker trimmer is an interesting tool because it has additional markings on it. So you have markings for seam lines, you have markings for the corners, kind of like what we saw on the 4-in-1 half square triangle ruler from Creative Grids, but you also have additional markings here. So if you had a block that was a cat's cradle block, you've got that square marked in. If you have a block where you have half square triangles combined with quarter square triangles, you have the markings here for those quarter square triangles matched with a half square triangle. So you have some additional markings on the Tucker trimmer. It also, this is the Tucker trimmer 1, and it will also do a larger block than what you can square up with the 4 1/2 square triangle ruler. This will go larger. So similar to the half square triangle, the 4 1/2 square triangle tool from Creative Grids, with this one also, my first cut is going to be lining up the seam line, and that will be my first cut. And now also, like with the other tool, when I rotate it, at this point I will line up both the seam line and the square marking, and I can go ahead and trim the other side. Now this tool is set up so that you have one set of markings in the one corner that are made for whole inch size blocks, and you have markings coming away from the other corner where you have the little half moon for 1/2 inch size blocks. So it will do whole and 1/2 inch blocks, and it will go all the way up to a 6 1/2. So it goes a little bit larger than what you can square up with the 4 1/2 square triangle tool. You can't go as big with that one. You got a lot smaller tool there, but it does a lot of other things. Now the next tool we're going to look at is my personal favorite. It is the block lock rulers. These come in a variety of sizes. You can always cut the size of the ruler or anything smaller than that by using the markings on the tool. So I have a fairly small tool out here. I also have this in a 6 1/2 inch size. I like to have this within a couple inches of the finished size of my block. So if you are doing 5 and 6 inch blocks, I use my 6 1/2 inch block lock. 3 and 4 inch blocks, I use my 4 1/2 inch block lock. Smaller blocks, I'll use usually my 2 1/2 inch block lock. So I like to be working with a size that's either the exact size or fairly close to the size of my block. So what makes the block lock rulers unique is the fact that they have this groove that's actually routed out of the bottom side of the acrylic. So there's a spot for the seam allowance to lay in. So when you go to place your block lock ruler, I always tell people put the logo to the low side of the block, the side you pressed away from. And when you slide this in place, it's going to start to push the block like you can see here, and that will happen as soon as the seam nests into that groove notch. So these rulers are quicker to place. You can get them in position to cut more quickly because you have a physical catch point. So I'm going to go ahead and trim one side of my block. I'll do a little rotate here, which I can because it actually grips the block for me. And now I can go ahead and slide over and use my other side here to adjust the block. So I'm going to do, for this one, I'm going to do looks like I've got a 2 1/2 inch finished. So I can use my markings on the ruler to trim the other side, and I'm just going to rotate this a little bit so I get it in a good position so that I can cut, and I will go ahead and trim. So you see with the block lock, I can cut the exact size of the block lock, or I can use the markings on the ruler to cut anything smaller than that. So those are 3 tools. They're all wonderful tools. They all work well for squaring up your half square triangle blocks, and we encourage you to give them a try. You can find all 3 of these tools on our website at redpinequiltshop.com.